In this video, I'm going to cover, let's see, how about Unit 6, Topic 5, solving a trig equation. All right, so let's check these out. In this example, you can see you have both sine and cosine. Same thing here, both sine and cosine. So you're going to have to figure what trig function you're going to convert the whole equation to. Is it sine or is it cosine? And I'll tell you, this is how you determine it. Whatever the linear term is, whatever the one that's not squared, that's what you have to convert everything to. So in this equation on the left, that would be sine. In the equation on the right, that's not, or it would be cosine. I don't care if you have sine squared and cosine squared in the same equation. You have to look specifically at the linear trig function, the one that's not being squared. So in these examples, if we go through how to do this, so in this first example, you need to take this cosine squared and convert it to something in terms of sine. Well, you're going to have to use the trig identity quite a bit when you're doing these questions. Not quite a bit, once. Sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. And then the two variations of that sine squared equals 1 minus cosine squared, and cosine squared equals 1 minus sine squared. So in this case, we're going to use this last iteration. So the cosine squared is 1 minus sine squared. You're going to distribute your -2. You're going to get everything on one side of the equal sign. So it's a quadratic equation set equal to 0. And then you're going to factor. Now, I have not shown the steps that you need to do for the grouping here. I covered that in a previous video, and hopefully you feel comfortable doing that. 2 times 1 is 2. You need numbers that multiply to 2 that add up to -3. You split it into 4 terms, and eventually you'll get to here. So when you have these values, sine theta equals 1/2 and sine theta equals 1. So what you're going to need to do for that is inverse sine of 1/2. If there was a negative, you don't plug it in your calculator. This is going to give you 30 degrees. And then since sine, this value is positive, you're thinking about what quadrants is sine positive in. Sine is the y coordinate. That's positive in quadrants 1 and 2. So to get this angle in quadrant 2, the work that I did not show is you're doing 180 minus 30 to get 150 degrees. I want to talk about this next one, sine theta equals 1. So anytime you get a value of sine or cosine of 0, -1, or +1, this is a special case, which you're going to use the unit circle. So you're going to draw your unit circle. You have to understand that sine is y. So that's going to be this point up here, which has the coordinates 0, 1. X is cosine, x is cosine, y is sine. So the sine value at 90 degrees is 1. That's where that came from. The directions say 0 to 2 pi. That tells us we need to convert to radians. So we're just multiplying by pi divided by 180 in each of these to end up with our 3 answers. I just want to highlight on this question, cosine theta equals -1/2. When you plug that in the calculator, do not type in the negative. So that's where you get the 60 degrees. Cosine is x. X is negative in quadrant 2 and 3. So I did not show the work for either of those, but let me do that now. In quadrant 2, 180 minus 60 is where the 120 comes from, and 180 plus 60 is where the 240 comes from. And then you can tell if you have to convert to radians by, again, looking at the directions. If you do need to round to the nearest degree, nearest tenth of a degree, after you plug it in your calculator and get this theta, you can round at that point. So that's it for solving trig equations.